Welcome everyone to the Maverick Mindset podcast, a show that shares with you stories of personal growth from true mavericks of business and of life. Together, we get to hear from my guests their stories of resilience, courage, success and failure, and understand their purpose and what drives them. And by zoning in on their life journeys, they share their key learnings, advice and perspectives that we can all take away to apply to our lives. Stuart, great to meet up again. The first podcast we did together got lots and lots of positive comments, lots of feedback. Very interested about your story and your journey as an entrepreneur. And thanks again for sitting down today with me, because I think there's a bit more I wanted to dig into on your motivations and your passion and really advice you can give to other entrepreneurs and people who want to go on a similar journey. As an entrepreneur, where do you get your inspiration from?
The funny thing is that people ask me that all the time about, what inspires you as a designer? My greatest inspiration is my teenage self. I think back to what I was like when I was, 13, 14, 15 years old, discovering life. And, there's all these other kids out there, like, a lot of them taller than me, better looking than me. And I really got into music, obviously a lifelong obsession with David Bowie. But then there was, Kate Bush came along, Adam, so many cool Japan, Duran Duran, the Human League, so many really cool bands. And when I was a kid, I was really into music. We all did back in those days, we used to make cassettes and give them to girls or boys, friends and people we were trying to impress with our music taste or our fashion style. And back in those days, there wasn't fashion shops like there are now. You had to make your own style. You would get things from markets or Army and Navy shops or charity shops. And when I was about 9, I was the first time I think I heard David Bowie, and it was on my Auntie Joyce's stereo in Broughty Ferry in Dundee. And I remember hearing it. I remember really clearly in my mind, hearing it and going home and thinking and asking, Mum, who's this? Because the words were the lyrics.
Can you remember the song?
I think it was Ashes to Ashes, but right. I'm not sure. It's a very vague memory, but I remember, I've only worked it out recently because you know what my mum said, that's David Bowie, and I said, well, how am I going to find out about this guy? She said, well, watch Top of the Pops. So we watched it on a Thursday and he had a pair of red boots on. And I know this because I drove my mum insane to get a pair of red boots. And she went and she bought me these red boots. And I only know this because my family take the piss out of me and laugh about it. I polished those boots every day and I used to sleep with them under my pillow and all that little 9-year-old boy, So
on David Bowie, because would you say he's your key influence? So without David Bowie, would you be sitting here today?
No, I wouldn't.
Really?
No. We wouldn't be sitting here. No.
Right. And what is it about David Bowie, the artist, that is intrinsic in your life?
I mean, I think from first hearing him in the words and then his style was, he was otherworldly. He had something about him that no one else did. And it's funny because, so many other people I know from, the Blitz kids and that was much later, when I was too young for the Blitz, but 14, I was about 13, 14. There were these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids at St. Martin's, all obsessed with David Bowie, Steve Strange and Rusty Egan, my mate, the DJ that launched the Blitz Club, and everybody would go there. So he was just ahead of his time, wasn't he? And he really accepting of everybody, if you listen to some of the lyrics and, they're not sure if you're a boy or a girl, just all of the different, he just encapsulated a whole youth, wasn't it? It was just a youth culture.
And also changed fashion as well in some ways, didn't he?
He did. I mean, when I look back at some of the things that he wore back then, I mean, it's obviously kind of crazy and all that sort of stuff. But, the Aladdin Sane, the lightning bolt, I mean, it's just such an iconic image. Where did he come up with something weird and cool like that? Who would have known 50 years later that's still regarded as the ultimate icon of cool, you know. Yeah. And it was just one guy in his mind, you know, coming up with, playing with, you know, he'd taken inspiration from, you know, Japanese kabuki, sort of like, you know, and kind of brought that onto a stage. And it was a stage persona and all that. But, you know, people went out and, you know, in those days, though, there was like, you know, it was like the punk era, and up and down the country, there was thousands, like in the middle of nowhere, in like Hull and Hartlepool and Derby, and you know, people with buying biker jackets and putting studs all over them and painting on them and wearing bin bags and things like that, and putting things, holding them together with safety pins. Lots of creativity came out of that period, and for me, as a young kid, I loved all that. That's all these British subcultures. When we look back on it now as well, the funniest thing is all these British subcultures that started off with, you know, mods and rockers and teddy boys and skinheads and soul boys and, you know, post-punk and new romantics and glam rockers, and they were all, it was all in a 10-year period. It was only about 2 years. Each one was about 2 years was their glory.
Which is kind of pop culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess nowadays, when you're creating a new brand, your own, you know, Stuart Trevor brand today, you've probably got to engage with that audience in a different way now.
It's always about the kids. I mean, I never really even realised it when I was, you know, obviously building All Saints as a brand. We would, I would rock up in Leeds and find a shop that was, you know, looked great, and I'd go around the shops and I'd chat up kids that were working in the coolest shops there and offer them a job, and they'd come and, you know, we'd get the shop fitters in there, and I would send them off with a flyer and say, right, we're going to have the launch party on the last Thursday of the month. Invite every kid from every college and every university and every shop, you know, anywhere, anyone that looks young and cool, or just anyone young, bring them in. And I just wanted a shop full of people for a launch party. I wanted people to walk by and go, bloody hell, what's that? There's hundreds of people.
And there's things have clearly changed, I guess, in terms of retail fashion now. So any young entrepreneurs wanting to create a fashion brand, it's a different set of dynamics now, isn't it? Is to get to that customer.
I think, I mean, what
advice would you give them?
To find a gap in the market, look at what there is, you know, I've said this before, it's not, you know, you're not reinventing the wheel, you're taking the wheel, because the wheel does a great job. You know, you're going to kind of like, you've got to try and work out how to make that wheel go faster, or what's, you know, sustainability is the biggest question on. I've just done a European tour with the Cannes Festival of Creativity, and then Chamonix, and everywhere I go, all they talk about is sustainability. So that's obviously a big area. People are worried about, you know, the amount of crap that is going on in the world, and piles of clothes, the height of Mount Everest going into landfill every 7 minutes, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, find a key area where, you know, people are all talking about it, and target that. But it's always the youth. That's what I was saying with All Saints. When the reason All Saints went like is because surreptitiously I was targeting youth by inviting them, giving them a free beer. I never thought for a second, they're going to be the 5 years time. That's going to be who's making, you know, making the money. That's how I'm going to make all the money, is get these kids obsessed with All Saints, and then they'll start spending money. So now we are, I think what we're doing now with the sustainability, it's young kids love it. We've got to work out our price points and try and get them, you know, target kids, because the kids are the future.
So you mentioned earlier, Stuart, about, you know, for young entrepreneurs starting out on their own, they've got to find a different kind of piece of the market to chase, and that wheel analogy was very, very good. In terms of kind of motivations for you, have your motivations changed? Or if an entrepreneur is trying to understand how to get motivated about driving something, what's your advice for motivation?
I don't know. I never really ever set out ever with the idea of, you know, I'm going to make a load of money. It's never been about that for me. I've always just had a sort of bit of creativity in there, and then things generally organically work. And I think, and it's authentic. And I think authenticity is really important. I think if people are very authentic about what their beliefs are, and if they're really into it, like people that get into, in the last couple of years, you've seen sportswear companies that have come out of nowhere, and they're overtaking Nike and Adidas and things like that. The people behind it were really into sportswear and all that, or healthy food, or gym equipment, or health drinks, or what are they called, like protein powder. People are really into
like an inner passion, isn't it?
I think you have to have passion. I think passion's really important. I think you can't just think, what can I do to make loads of money? I know, because you've seen fashion businesses come and go when it's all corporations trying to make money. They try and hit, they see someone doing really well and they try and copy. How many people try to copy All Saints? And here we are 30 years later. All Saints is still number one. You can't,
with the T-shirt you designed.
And it's that's the funny thing, isn't it? Like nobody would really know, but that Ramskull T-shirt, I designed that 30 years ago. I had no idea back then. It's still their number one. I know the fact that designers that are working there now, they drink in the pub over the road from their office. I've got mates that went there. They're like, that fucking Ramskull. And how are we ever going to beat the Ramskull? They can't, it's the number one bestseller.
Where was the inspiration for the Ramskull? Just really quick.
The Ramskull came because I'd done a polo shirt. I didn't really like polo shirts, but I was told you've got to do a polo shirt. So I did a polo shirt, and you need a logo sort of thing. And I did a skull and crossbones, because I've always been obsessed with pirates. Pirates actually were good. Pirates worked for good. They were disgruntled ex-employees of the Royal Navy that used to get treated like shit by, the British Royal Navy. Pirates were good. So skull and crossbones. And then Hugo Boss copied it. And I was like, what am I going to do that I know. And I had lots of taxidermy and ram skulls and things like that. I thought, I'm going to do a ram skull. It's a bit satanic. It's a bit, devilish, a little bit punk. No one's going to copy a ram skull. So we did the ram skull. Oh my God. It did immediately hit like hit the ground running. Yeah.
A question, obviously, when you're on that building a brand journey, and a lot of people I know, kind of as entrepreneurs, you have good days and bad days. It's a roller coaster, isn't it, of emotions, really, and can be a very lonely journey. So, how did you get through some of those really challenging times when you hit a brick wall and you thought, "How am I going to get around this?" What kept you going?
It's a roller coaster ride, isn't it? I mean, you just have to. Sometimes you're on. Sometimes you're having a great time. You're looping the loop and everything's great. And then there are obviously tough times, there are, I think I've always had this drive. And I've always looked at, and also I have quite a rare, I have a commercial side as well as a creative side. So I always think about, I know I've got to pay the bills. I know that I've got to,
it's got to work.
It's got to work, yeah. And you've got to have it. And sometimes though, you can go for years, like without making that one decision that changes everything and all that. And then suddenly you think, oh, do you know what? Why didn't I never think that again? I need an entry level price point T-shirt that everybody's going to buy all day long and all that. Yeah. And if you look at that one, I mean, we never had that in the beginning of All Saints. I used to work my bollocks off coming up with new ideas all the time. And then you come up with one T-shirt with a little logo on it and it becomes the best-selling item in the history of the brand. Yeah. Here we are 30 years later, it's still the best-selling item. You think, you have to have a commercial mind. Sometimes you hit a wall, just go to bed and get up the next day and think, well, fresh new day, what can I do to change everything,
And for someone starting out today, what advice would you give them in terms of, if someone comes up with an idea, it could not necessarily have to be fashion, it could be anything. What's the key driver they've got to kind of chase? You
need really good people around you. You can't do it on your own. Yeah. You've got to find people that can do the things that you can't do, because you can't do everything. I mean, I'm obviously can't do the accounts. I can't, set up websites. I can't,
So like the team, you build.
You need a team. You need to find a team of good people and find people and motivate them and find people that are dedicated and hardworking and have the vision, the goal that you have. Like, that you need to know how to get from A to Z, but you need to know that there's a B, C, D, E, So yeah, it's all about finding the right people and then, cultivating a really great working atmosphere.
Yeah. And do you think the kind of working environment has changed dramatically since you started out? I mean, obviously today you've got technology that allows people to work from home, so you don't have as much face time. And if you're a creative business, that's probably a challenge today, would you think? Or it's also an advantage because people can be anywhere?
I personally, I like, meeting up with people and you can throw ideas off each other and, work together. Things, the world's a different place than it was years ago. Costs are much higher. It's very difficult. I mean, I think you need to, if you're going to have an idea and you want to get on with it, you need to work out what the costs are, where you're going to
viable? Is it commercial, like you're saying?
Yeah, there's so many people I know come to me with it. I've had this idea and I want it, and you look at it and you explain to people, do you know how much money it costs to get it off the ground? Even one employee is going to cost you £30,000 a year.
Plus the NI, plus the days off sick, plus the holidays.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money involved in anything nowadays. It's
true, actually.
Scary. Yeah. And it's you really need to have the right sort of like funding as well. If you don't, I mean, I know with this new project, the only reason I decided to do it again is I had so many investors come to me. I was introducing them to young startup brands, and all these investors were like, why don't you do another brand? We'll invest in it. And so when I came up with a plan and I went to them, they actually put the money where their mouth was. So I know that it's going to be properly funded. It's not, because even if you have a load of money yourself, it's very, very, you'll get to a point you think, Jesus Christ, I've spent £50,000. If I don't write another check for 20,000 today, it's over and all that. You can, that's difficult. You get to a point you think, I've blown what am I going to do? I've blown 50 grand. I have to put another, there comes a point where you're going to hit a wall. So you need to make sure you've got funding in place. You've got people that believe in you, people that will back it up.
And the right team, as you
And the right team, yeah.
Good. Couple of quick fire questions. Worst advice you've ever been given in business?
I don't know. Some of the best advice, and I was thinking about this the other day, for a while when I was, I think about 5 years into All Saints, I was living with Matt Goss, who used to, be in the boy band Bros. And I was offered a shop in Brighton. And I remember asking him, like, do you think I should do it? And he was like, oh, for God's sake, mate, listen, if in life you get given an offer and all that like that, just, roll with it. Yeah. Because what will happen in a year's time, you'll either say, wow, that was the best thing I've ever done, or, oh, well, never mind, we'll shut that shop and move on. Yeah. But unless you actually go out there and do it, I think there's other people that said that as well. No one creates anything exciting in a room, do they? You've got to get up in the morning and get out there and do it. Yeah, and if opportunity comes your way, I think it's important to weigh up the pros and the cons and the costs. It's mainly if I can do it, and I'm not going to lose absolute fortune, and I'll take the risk and if I hadn't opened that third store in Brighton, there wouldn't be 60, 70, 80 shops. And there wouldn't, the business would never have taken off like it did. Yeah. That third shop really kind of cemented the business onto,
And had you not done that, who knows? But at least you had the courage to do it. And that's what you've got to have sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember also when I was, before I started All Saints, I was working for David REISS. And a friend of mine, Peter Siddell, who used to be the buyer for Jones on the King's Road, which was a really, really cool store. He left and he went to Joseph, and he was buying from all the top designers like Helmut Lang and Comme des Garçons, and he offered me a job as the assistant buyer for Joseph, and I was going to take that job. I remember, and I ended up giving it to a mate of mine, and he got the job, and he ended up going off buying from going to Paris Fashion Week, all the catwalk shows, buying. And I said, no, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing, because if I do anything, it's going to be my own label. I had no idea where I was going to get the money from. I had no clue how I was going to do my own brand, but I had this sort of vision that I could, if I was going to do anything, I had a really good thing going with David REISS. I was earning well, completely free reign to put collections together and running the business for him. And then the opportunity came up and somebody was willing to fund my own brand. And it's, I'm glad that I never took that other job, because, I would just have ended up being a salary man the rest of my life.
So vision, self-belief, passion.
Yeah.
Also getting off your arse and going and doing it, and not waiting for the door to open, forcing your way through it.
You got to not. I always say that if you want to be successful in life, it's like what people say to me lots of times. Oh, it's all right for you. You founded All Saints, like as if that was easy. There's a corridor, and in that corridor, there's hundreds of doors, and you just have to knock on the door, and then you'll open the door and they'll say, no, mate, sorry, not interested. And you don't give up after 10 doors. You just keep going, knocking on that door, because one idiot's going to open up and go, amazing, come on, let's go.
Brilliant.
And then, that's how you get on in life.
Great. What I want to know is, what are your top 3 Bowie songs?
Oh, do you know, there's so... Changes is a really great song, and I can't remember the words 100%, but one of the ones, and these children that you spit upon as you try and change their world are immune to your, immune to your, because they're aware of what you're trying to do, and I think those are, he was so far ahead. He knew that that these huge. This was before we had shitty governments like we got now that just piss all over the kids, isn't it? Yeah. Bring back national service. What a fucking joke. But what are my favourite Bowie songs? I think Ashes to Ashes. I love Let's Dance. It's a very commercial song.
Yeah, it was very good.
But I was about 15, 16 when that came out, and when that came on, it was and then you'd run to the dance floor and love to, as a young kid. That was a great tune. There's so many. It's of
course,
it just goes on and on.
And also different genres and different styles he did. It was never, you could tell it was a Bowie track.
Yeah,
but it could be completely different to what you'd heard before.
A Space Oddity is kind of like a joke song. It's about but that was the one that kind of. But when you listen to it now, it's still a great song. Yeah. I still, whenever it comes on, or I still listen to it every week. I play David Bowie. And I now go through different sections. I like to find there's still tracks that I've never heard before that you're like, oh wow, God, I haven't heard that before. That's ridiculous. He's the master.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much. Yeah. I'm sure we will. Our paths will cross again. We'll do it again.
I can't remember I forgot. I've completely blown because I've written it all down. But the words from Changes about the children. Yeah. And these children that you spit upon as you try and change their world.